Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran. I like to help people using a spiritual perspective. Today I wanted to talk about fear and why fear is actually such an important aspect of being a human, why it's such an important experience. I'm just going to get right into it. Fear is one of those things that we all don't like. We don't want to experience it, and we think that we're weak for having it, even though everybody on the planet has had fear over something at some point. Might be different fear, could be the same fear, but everybody has a certain fear in regards to some aspect of their life. But the thing about fear is that if it wasn't for fear, you wouldn't actually have anything to overcome. You wouldn't have anything to reach to aspire to. And without fear, without that obstacle in the way, you wouldn't really have anything to move towards. You wouldn't have any chance of success. You wouldn't have a real motivation for doing anything. People are afraid of fear, and yet equally on the opposite side of fear, that triumph, that success, that victory, that's such a potent feeling that you would never get that feeling if it wasn't for the fear and the risk of doing something. Obviously, one of the most cliched examples of fear is in asking somebody out, asking them telling them how you feel about them. For either boys or girls, whatever, everybody's afraid of getting rejected. What's funny about rejection, in this specific example anyway, is that being rejected by the person that you might have feelings for isn't actually a rejection of who you are as a person, as a being. It's more of a rejection of the situation, of the action. You ask a girl out or you ask a guy out and they happen to say no. They're not rejecting who you are as a person, they're rejecting your advance, your offer. And that's not, in terms like that, it's not actually that big of a deal. And yet, you do things like that enough and you build up this resistance to fear. You make fear something that isn't a controlling factor of your life. It's more just something that you can live with, something that you can recognize and bend to your will in a way. I like to think of fear as sort of a neighbor that you don't like. Now, you might not like the neighbor, but at the end of the day, you get to close your door on the neighbor. You get to live your own life and move forward. Fear is nothing more than something that you don't like. But there are plenty of things that you don't like in life that you truly don't have to deal with. I don't like Burger King, so I don't go to Burger King. So that's pretty simple. We make fear into this, into its own entity, into its own monster, when really it becomes this fear of fear itself. Just the initial, this feeling inside of your heart like you just can't do it. You get stuck. The words get stuck in your throat. The actions that you want to take come out sloppy. But fear isn't that big of a deal because, again, we tend to demonize the fear. We make it bigger than what it actually is. But fear is just a natural part of being a human, having an experience. You wouldn't be here on this planet. You wouldn't be this being of love and energy and light if you didn't get to have those experiences, because you don't get to love yourself. You don't get to a point where you love who you are if you don't experience anything. If you don't get rejected, if you don't experience failure, if you don't overcome the things in your way, you don't get to be that person who stands above the ashes from which you rose from. You don't get to be that amazing person, all of your potential that exists inside of you. You don't get to be that person if it isn't for those things that we perceive to be negative. And again, fear is just this, it's not this palpable type of demonic entity. You can actually overcome this quite easily by, of course, just detaching from it and seeing it for what it really is. It's not anything but something that could be considered your friend. You can befriend your fear, recognize that it's natural to have the fear, recognize that you're never going to be fearless in all circumstances of your life, at all times, and that really all it comes down to is courage. Having the courage to take the action, to take the first step forward. Because in the worst case scenario is you just don't get what you want when you wanted it. And that's really not that big of a deal, because there is plenty of examples throughout my life, your life, everyone's life, of getting something that they thought they wanted only for it to turn out to be a terrible sort of thing. And no matter what you do in life, you're going to have to face fear. And people try to work out fear. I myself love, trying to overthink shit, being a Virgo. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of looking at the fear and saying to it, well, you exist. I accept that you exist, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So you can be scared, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And that's the great thing about fear, is that it really has no choice but to go with the flow. You still might be afraid, but if you have fear and you recognize that I have fear inside of my body, it's in my heart space somewhere, but I'm going to go ahead and do the action that scares me anyway, your fear has to go along with you. And eventually, as it goes along with you and you start to realize on a higher intuitive level that the things that you were afraid of really aren't that big of a deal, your fear sort of diminishes. It doesn't really become fear anymore, it becomes a sort of caution. And then you start to understand in a very insightful way that fear was only ever there to protect you, never to hurt you. Fear is a way of protecting what your ego, what it feels that needs to be protected. So in a way, and this would be looking at it from a positive perspective, in a way that your fear is really just like a guardian of you. It's just trying to protect you from being hurt. And that is something that you might do to a child or your family or to close friends or anybody really, is you don't want somebody to get hurt, so you try to protect them. And of course, there are plenty of examples in life when that goes too far. And fear can get out of control, and that's of course just another example, obviously, of fear becoming something more than it is. And when you think about something over and over again, instead of just doing it, the fear builds up, and suddenly it's not just fear anymore, it's paranoia, it's justifications, rationalizations, all sorts of things that'll keep you from doing the thing that you just want to do. Because if you want to do something, trust that feeling, because if it doesn't work out, you get to learn that you didn't want to do it, and you also get the feeling of satisfaction knowing that you had the courage to do the thing in the first place. And that's all it is. So just some quick tips for dealing with that, honestly. When you have something that you want to do, something you're afraid of, do little steps first, just to build up the courage, to build up the endurance that you would otherwise need to continue on down that path. Because doing little things gives that you're able to do, that you can compromise with yourself to do, will give you a little bit more added courage. Say if you did want to ask somebody out, since we're going with the cliche anyway, what you would do is you would just talk to strangers, smile at people, random stuff, just little things to get you out of your head, just to express yourself a little bit, to be alive, you know what I mean, to have that feeling, so that when the time comes, you don't feel so bad. Because even when the things happen and you kind of fuck up and you have like a little let's say like you might be sweating, or you're shaking a little bit, and the words come out like slush and all those things, you can actually roll with it. You can make that part of who you are, because it's not like a bad thing to be nervous or to be afraid. Some of it, if you've ever seen people act like that in movies as a character, you often laugh, and it can be endearing and charming. And really, it's just about going with that fear. The fear isn't going to go away, but it will. It's a controllable type of recognition. It's not an evil thing. It's not bad. You can go with it. You do the thing, and you allow yourself to be afraid, but you do it anyway. So you don't dwell on the fear or why you're afraid, though it certainly would help to find out why you're afraid. But you focus on the drive that you have for the action that you want, and your visualizations for what your expected outcome would be, or the feeling that you would want, and you focus on the motivation and just the other everything but the fear. You focus on the action, on that feeling that you would get, on the courage. You focus on that, on just doing it anyway. Just saying, you know what, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm gonna just do it because I don't care. Because what's the worst that's gonna happen? You'll still be alive. There'll be plenty of other opportunities for you to face rejection in your life. So what's one out of a fucking million? It doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter. And it takes a lot of deep reflection, a lot of experience, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of setbacks to really get that, hammered into you, is to just understand that it doesn't matter. Not that big of a deal. Nothing bad is going to happen. And the worst thing that could happen is not the worst thing that could happen. And that's something that I've just learned myself. I used to be so caught up in my head, still am to a degree, about taking action, doing certain things. And eventually it just got to the point where it's like, who gives a shit? Just who cares? It doesn't matter. All the things, I was stressing about things that didn't end up being that bad, or, I ended up being fine just because, at one point I didn't have a job and now I have a very good job. And when I didn't have a job, I'd be like, oh, god damn, I suck. And, but now I do. And as I was stressing out for no reason, I was causing myself so much pain and stress and sorrow. When I could have just went with the flow, and instead of it being 3 months, it could have been 3 weeks type of thing, right? And that's just the same thing with fear. You don't need to dwell on it. If you have the fear, the best thing you can do is go with it as quickly as you can, rather than, let that fear build up. Because you should know more than anyone that the only person able to convince you of doing anything or to not doing something is yourself, right? Because we're the people that are actually in control of our lives and are the ones that are talking to ourselves constantly throughout the day. So notice what your thoughts are like. Just give yourself some leeway, accept the fear for what it is, forgive yourself for having it. Remember, you wouldn't want to talk to, if you had a child that had a fear about something, fear of doing something, hopefully you wouldn't discourage them or treat them poorly or talk to them in a negative way. You would explain to them. So just treat yourself like you would somebody that you love, even if you're not sure how to love yourself properly yet, and just take that first step, and everything will work out perfectly in the end for your highest good. And even if it doesn't work out immediately, it'll work out at some other point. And that's just how it goes. All right, so this was a quick little message, little update. I hope it helps some people. If it did, let me know. If it didn't, don't let me know, because I don't want to know. All right, so have a great day.